Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and a warm welcome to all our guests joining us from around the world. Whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening, it's a pleasure to have you join us. And today we're in conversation with Michelle Mills-Porter, who knows all about human behavior and being able to read people. So we're really looking forward to our conversation. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
We're so looking forward to diving in. But before we do that, we have to give you due recognition and share your bio with our audience. So John's
I think when you said Michelle Mills-Porter, I think you should have called her Maverick Michelle Mills-Porter. I think there's another M in there at the beginning.
Oh, you're happy with that?
All right, so let's do the bio. So Michelle Mills-Porter is a multi-award winning business owner specializing in non-visual communication. That's over the phone and the written word, and non-verbal communication, that's body language, and a crossover into the written word. At least that's where she started her career. She was at the top of her game as a CEO of a maverick marketing company. There's a word right in there. It's even in the bio. And she started the company from nothing when she actually was caught in one of the biggest natural disasters in our living history. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, I'm sure. But what she learned in the aftermath of devastating adversity was what she calls the magnificence of humanity. And it changed her trajectory forever. Now, fast forward 2 decades, and Michelle is known as the people reader. I think Andrew mentioned that. A human behavior expert specializing in core values, motivation, and collaboration. Her mission is to uncover your magnificence and show leaders how to lead with empowerment. So there's a whole lot we're hoping to unpack from that around clearly our themes of harmony at home, thriving at work, and winning at life. And I think Michelle can touch on all of those 3.
Yeah, I love that phrase, discover your magnificence. So Michelle, you're going to help us today to discover our magnificence. But let's go back a bit to talk about some of those pivotal moments you experienced in life, the things that have formed or created a foundation for the passion that drives you today. Tell us your story.
Well, I think if we're looking historically, most of us will realise that our core values or our core drivers were formed in our very formative years. And if I go back in my history, that's certainly true. And for me, it's all because I'm born at the end of August. So
okay.
What happened in my school years was that actually when I was coming out of nursery into primary school, I don't know what was going on with the school year, but most of my friends went into school, but I wasn't deemed old enough to be
the baby in the class. Yeah,
so I was not held back, but I found myself, having to make friends with new people and not go to the excitement of everyone starting school. And then when I did start school, I was quite advanced in terms of the other people around me. And that something happened to the end of the year that made them decide to jump me forward by 2 years rather than 1 year. So what they didn't realise they were doing is they were pulling me away from any relationship that I had, throwing me into a situation where I was the odd one out.
Right.
What I realised is that everyone would only let me play if I was it in Tig or I was the wolf in What Time Is It, Mr. Wolf? So I really struggled. I didn't have a best friend until I was 8 years old. Wow. And that's because they just kept pulling me around and separating those relationships at a time that was really important for young people to be able to understand how to navigate those relationships. So that's where it all started. I had this interest in what is it that makes me different? Why am I standing out? What do I need to do in order to build rapport and be part of that group?
Wow, that's amazing insight, or things to have to become intentional about at such a young age. But I'm sure, as you said, that set you up for being able to observe and understand and interpret behavior and know how to navigate to create these relationships.
And
And
then
then,
I guess I'm saying, just thinking in the jump forward 2 years, you'd have moved from being at the beginning very much the oldest in the class to being absolutely the baby in the class when you moved forward there. So yeah,
yeah,
why would the big ones want to play with the baby in the class kind of a thing if you look at it from the outside? But you can see
I
how that
think
can mess with your head.
absolutely. And I think one of the complications was the fact that my brother is only 10.5 months older than me. So I came into school with my brother being in the year above me and then being in the big side when I was in the little side. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden, I was thrown into the same year as him.
Mm.
From then on, everyone thought, all the teachers thought we were twins. They
yeah,
just thought that I was the slightly behind twin because at that young age,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
colouring between the lines, learning a times table, learning to write, the difference of 10 months is vast.
yeah, 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 yeah.
absolutely.
What that did, and I'm never a victim. What that did is it created this competitiveness in me. Always wanted to give it. I can do that. I can do that. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
I can see how that's really, it's great that you went back to the really young formative years to show where that interest came from. So just talk us quickly through how that interest developed into the company you started. And then, as you said, I don't remember how you described it, but one of those really pivotal life moments with a very internationally known disaster that you had,
Lived through,
that you lived
survived.
through, that you experienced.
Well, when I left, because I joined the Royal Air Force at 17, that wasn't the place for a maverick, which I realised as soon as my personality came out. So I think I told you in the chat before, I've never seen such a long queue of peers and sergeants and officers queuing up to sign my papers to get me out. So they were very happy to support my application to leave. I just fell into this world at 21 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I fell into a sales career. I also became a rock promoter and started singing in rock bands and promoting rock bands. So I
Oh,
was,
Oh,
didn't know
wow.
that.
yeah, I was doing lots of eclectic things, as neurodiverse people do, but I was undiagnosed at the time, so I didn't realise that. But I had to claw my way up through sales because everyone else had got a massive head start on me. They'd either been to university or they'd been in the workplace for a few years, and I had a trade in the Royal Air Force that was not transferable into the
Mhm.
workplace. So I literally just had to learn very quickly how to work my way up quickly. And sales seemed to be an area where actually, if you can build rapport with people really quickly, you can excel.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
actually clawed my way up through sales. My last employed position was as head of client development for the Brandworks in London with the gorgeous Lynn Cassidy and Hugo Brooks. I loved that job. But then I needed to come home in about 2000. And that was when I said, if I can do this for an organisation, I can do it for more
Hmm.
organisations
Hmm.
and help more people. So I started my own business. That turned out to be this extremely um, disruptive marketing agency, is the best way that I can call it. We turned the industry on its head by saying we will work on results only. What I taught all of my people to do was to build massive rapport really quickly using the phone. I mean, that
Right.
really disruptive stuff. So to be able to build rapport that fast, it's an incredible skill. And what I realized is that people that talk over the phone, if they can communicate and build rapport over the phone, then actually when they're face to face, it is a jog in the park.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
They
And
are-
that just to jump in there for a minute, that's like a dying art. So that skill needs to come back. We're much more about texting and WhatsApping and messaging people instead of speaking, never mind on the phone, even face to face. Sometimes we won't do that. So we'll just, as we say in Jamaica, drop a pin there and
Come
we'll
back
come
to
back
that.
to that at some
Absolutely.
point. I don't want to disrupt the flow. So you started the business, you worked with lots more clients, and how did that link with this you know life-changing experience overseas?
yeah, so I was winning every single award going. I mean, we were winning Chamber of Commerce awards. I was one of the youngest companies in the country to gain investors in people. And I'm not bragging about that. The reason that I applied for Investors in People was to show people that I believed in an empowering form of leadership
Mhm.
rather than the kind of leadership that I'd been experiencing in the
Right.
past.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That empowering leadership was what I wanted people to understand. So I wanted people to be able to come to me and know that I was going to look after them. I was going to provide an environment where they would thrive and be empowered. And I've never stopped banging that drum. But I decided to go on a couple of holidays to celebrate my success with my partner at 12 years. And we found ourselves, we learnt to dive in the UK, and we went on our first holiday at Christmas ever. So we left the family at Christmas 2004, and we found ourselves in the second most devastated place on the planet in the middle of the Boxing Day tsunami.
Wow. And this is in Sri Lanka.
We were in the never eat shredded wheat, southwest coast of Sri. I always have to do that. South Sri Lanka, in a little place called Hikkaduwa, which is just beautiful. And yeah, it was devastatingly hit. I mean, 4,000 people in our village were killed immediately. It's 2 miles away from the train that crashed with 2,000 people on it. I think only about 3 survivors on that train. I mean, it was horrendous.
And we know one of them. We've shared that with you. So this story is very, very real. Well, of course it's real, but very personal to us. To just know the devastation and the trauma that people went through in that Boxing Day.
And I don't know whether this is whether it's a healing process or what, but what I tend to do is I focus on the positivity. So yes, it was the most devastating time of my life, but it was also the most enlightening. Full stop. What I saw in the aftermath of huge adversity was that you can see straight through to the core of humanity. And there is this beauty, this benevolence, this compassion, where you see people trying to save the life of people they don't even know. I'm getting goosebumps now, and I will never stop getting goosebumps when I talk about it, because it changed me forever.
So where were you in all of this? And what was your experience of it? I know I'm digressing a bit, but I think we want to understand, the impact it had on you and therefore the change that it's driven in you since then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let me just give you a little bit of an overview. So we were in the 3rd floor of our hotel when it hit. We couldn't get any higher in the Hikkaduwa Beach Hotel. We'd had breakfast with all of our friends, but we had a particularly brilliant party held by the Sri Lankans the night before, and I wanted to go back to bed rather than driving. So let's just say that we went back to bed, and there's a very good reason for this story working out. Whereas most of my friends knew what happened when it first hit, I didn't, because when we woke up, hearing this incessant banging and the sound like there was a storm outside, I was like, what's going on? My husband got up and he pulled the curtain back and went, I think you better look at this. And I ran to the window, and we were 30 foot underwater by then. So, literally there was all this swishing and sounding like a storm. That was the waves in a palm tree. And I couldn't reach down and touch them. And that incessant banging was a boat being smacked into the side of the hotel. So the first we saw of it, we were stranded on the 3rd floor of the hotel. We couldn't get out because the water was already up to the ceiling of the 1st floor. So it was some hours before we were able to half swim and half wade out with whatever belongings we thought might have some value, because everything that was of monetary value had no currency anymore. And we got out a couple of hours later. But what people don't understand, as they always say, were you in the water? Were you in the waves? I was like, no, I wasn't in the water initially. And they're like, oh, right, okay. And they're not interested. But they don't realise that tsunami comes and goes and comes and goes. And we lived in it for a week. And I actually picked up the most devastating internal infection from the tsunami water. So yes, I was in and out of it, for a long time. And it's not just the initial wave; it's the devastation afterwards that that makes all of that trauma.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking now, had you not been on the 3rd floor, we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Please, Jonathan, that The night before, I asked, because I was being a bit of a snob, and I asked whether we could be moved to a better room. And they said, yes, they could move us to a better room. And I said, where is that room? They said, it's on the first floor. And I said, can you please move us tonight? And they said, no, we're really sorry. We can't move you until tomorrow.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Angel.
Divine protection right there. Wow.
Oh, wow. So I hear what you said about, in that moment or going through that whole tsunami experience, it was devastating, but you observed the best of humanity in how people were just extending themselves to be there for others, to help others, the benevolence. What is it that you now, how have you used that to do the work that you're doing in discovering the magnificence of you? I'd love to hear that connection.
Let me, if I can, let me go through the most important things that I learned, because that will then tell you why I've moved it forward. So in the aftermath of that tsunami, I realised that when we were in Jimmy Lowell's garden, 100 odd refugees, all from different countries, we communicated beautifully. We all spoke different languages. We didn't have a communication issue. When we are all working towards the same goal or have the same enemy, we will communicate very easily. So when people say there's a communication issue, that's an excuse for something deeper.
Yeah.
We can communicate if we want to, believe you me. What I also realised is that we are driven by an unseen force. So our motivation is not on show, like our behaviour might be on show to others. Our motivation isn't. So that intrigued me. You don't know what motivates different people unless you get down on your knees and really understand them.
Yeah.
Or ask those questions, like you say in your 4 habits. You have to ask those questions in order to elicit, the evidence that allows you to build rapport. So, so the second thing is that we're driven by this unseen force. The next thing is that actually, when we come together, when we pull our sources together, we can create something greater than the sum of its parts. So
Absolutely.
that collaboration is more powerful than I would ever have imagined. And being someone that always did things just because I could and just because I was independent, I just got on with it. For me, what we can do when we pull that together, that is astonishing. And that was really key for me. So it was all of these different things that I learned that made me think, hold on, if we can see all this untapped potential when we face adversity, why do we not see our potential in everyday life?
Yeah. Very powerful.
Yeah, and I realised it's because we live such a blessed life in most areas, especially in this part of the world, such a blessed life that we never get to test our mettle. We never know what we're going to be like in that situation. So I spent 20 years trying to understand, how can I show people what I learned and what we discovered without them having to go through anything as horrific as what we went through. And that's what drove me to research, to learn, to study, to practice, and then to end up creating a whole suite of my own tools, because no other tool I came across could get what I wanted out of these tools. So I created a whole suite of tools myself, and now that's what I share with others. And I love holding up a mirror and just going, boom, you are fantastic.
Yeah. Love that. I love that adversity point, though, that you're making there, Michelle, about how adversity can bring the best out of people. We were sharing with you just before we went live or for the recording that we've just come back from camp. And I remember an early experience we had of camp a few years ago, where down in Shepton Mallards, which is for our international visitors, or international audience, this is down in the southwest coast of England. The rain comes down there quite a bit. And one of these camps, it was proper rain coming down. I mean, literally the rain came down and the water came up, and there were tents swimming around in water. But that's what brought the best out of people. Everybody was out there helping everybody else. I remember lifting this baby, it's still in their playpen, and the whole it might as well have been a swimming
They've
pool.
been floating on.
It was floating, lifting them out, and then the whole tent had to be moved to dry ground and so on. but you absolutely saw people just working happily together in those kind of circumstances. It's not the same as a tsunami, I get it, but
Yeah.
just adversity, as you say, bringing the best out of people
But
there.
that's such a fascinating point because, it could be a small local incident like the flooding we had at Shepton Mallet, or we could look at COVID. For a moment, we had a glimpse of what it is like to push past differences and really care for each other and work together to help everybody survive and thrive. Just for that moment, as devastating as COVID was, we understood what it was like to be caring, to be loving, and to be inclusive. So I get what you're saying, that it's there, it's latent, it's present in all of us. How do we
Bring it out.
bring that to the fore? So I'm curious to understand some of the tools or the techniques that you use to help people discover their magnificence, uncover that unseen force of motivation, and channel it in the right direction. Tell us some more.
Well, I think first of all, we are so aligned in that thought, because when people say, "Oh my gosh, you were in a tsunami, that was dreadful," but what does that mean to me? And what I tell people is that you cannot measure one adversity against another. So, especially when I'm talking to children and to young adults, the adversity of losing a pet or a grandparent is just as big as something like a natural disaster. The brain doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Adversity is adversity. But
And you don't know the difference if that's the worst that you've ever experienced. So yeah, got that.
and I'm telling you now, the tsunami was not the biggest adversity in my life at all. The biggest adversity
Wow.
in my life may have been something else, like a very, very abusive and short marriage. That was devastating to me, way more devastating than the tsunami. So you can't measure them.
Yeah.
The point is that actually, one of the examples I use is what it feels like when you are collaborating with others. What it feels like is when you are out on the streets clapping for the NHS and the support.
Oh,
Feeling of love, connection.
yeah.
Planet. It feels like the planet is vibrating with love.
Yeah.
That feeling that I want others to feel.
Yeah.
It's
That's
all,
powerful. I still remember it, and it makes me teary-eyed
Mm.
just remembering that.
I think once you've been on that surfboard riding that wave, you never want to fall off. You want to get back. Every time you fall off, you want to get back on that wave. And for me, showing people their magnificence through my tools allows them to get on that board and collaborate with others. So just to answer your question, my first tool is called Essence. It's a core driving forces analysis. It looks simplistic in its output, but that, don't be mistaken, it is very, very powerful. The reason it looks simplistic is because what I'm showing people is actually where they are fundamentally connected to their culture, their religion, their caregivers, their experiences in their early years. And it can be very powerful and emotional for some people. But what I'm showing people is actually when you say these are my values or these are my core drivers, same thing. Actually, when you look at someone else and say, "No, you don't share my values, we can't get on," that is the least inclusive thing I've ever heard. That person has just had different culture, different religion, different upbringing, different experiences. So they view the world from a different perspective. And that's beautiful. That can be beneficial. You don't have to say, "No, you're not in my tribe." What's that about? And don't get me wrong, I take this work into organizations and show leaders how to unleash their people power. So I do this for leaders and everyone, saying, actually, if you're hiring on values, please check yourself. Don't hire on values, because you will get in trouble with the DE&I officer, I'm telling you now. Can't suddenly say you're a different background, culture, upbringing, religion, and therefore you can't be part of our company. So just
Yeah.
be careful what you're asking.
Yeah. 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 So that's the first one, is you're discovering your essence.
Yes.
What's the second one?
Sorry, just to finish off on that, the essence
Mhm.
profile, what it gives you is it gives you not only what truly drives you, but therefore which buckets are your most important to keep topped up. Now,
Right.
if you keep those buckets topped up, what you will find is happiness and fulfillment. And if you find that those buckets are being drained and having holes poked in them, that's when you start to get stressed, ill, even worse, to the point of huge breakdown, which is what I have. Huge, what I call a medical breakdown. It's what people would call burnout on a massive level. That's when all your buckets are leaking. So actually, the Essence profile is brilliant for helping people understand their mental wealth. Moving on from that, we then have a behaviour profile. And I love the work of William Moulton Marsden, who created DISC. What I've done with the DISC theory is I've written it in the way that I think he meant it, because there are too many copies and too many people that copy mistakes and, and get it wrong. So I went back to his original work and rewrote it in his mindset, I believe, but then took it a stage further. So not only are we looking at the different behaviour types, but we're looking at how other people might perceive your behaviour type. So whereas people who are like me may, for instance, see me as being charismatic and creative and a thought leader, other people with a different behaviour profile will see exactly the same person and see me as intimidating, dominating, and so you have to understand how other people will perceive your behaviour in order to build rapport. And then it goes even deeper into 12 prominent qualities, which shows every single person, how every person shines. And there, for every high quality, there is a low one. So if I'm really high on self-confidence, I will be really low on accuracy, and vice versa. So every single person in an organisation, as an example, will get their chance to shine.
Right. Wonderful.
Yeah, we talk about superpowers in that context. It's identifying superpowers and recognizing that, yes, they're superpowers when they're applied as they should be, but they can also be a problem when you have too much of a superpower.
Or the source of an irritation to a different behavior profile. So,
Exactly. So, and then just very, very swiftly, the other tools consist of the one that allows you to covertly read the profile of somebody else. So let's imagine that we had a couple that were, let's imagine a workplace situation, or a couple, I don't know, if they're not getting on. One person can actually put the details of how they perceive somebody else into the analysis, and it will literally just tell you, this is how you build rapport. This is how this is how you bridge the gap. This is what they like. This is what's going to trigger them, just based on things about their body language, the way they sign their email off.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So,
it's quite amazing.
So this is based on your perception of them. You complete the report based on your understanding of them, and it then gives you ideas on how to connect with that person, and build rapport with them, engage with them.
Exactly. Okay. So that can really repair relationships sometimes.
And you're saying and that works both for domestic relationships and work relationships?
They all do. They work for both, because your brain doesn't know whether you're clocking on or clocking off.
Exactly. It's about the person and the skills as an individual, not where you are.
Exactly. Exactly. And the other tools I've created, Illuminator, which is brilliant because I'm so excited about this. Illuminator actually highlights real superpowers in the workplace, and this is where we're talking about neurodiversity, because I realise my behaviour profiles are going aruga. There is a potential that this person might want to go and get a diagnosis. So I created Illuminator, which is only paper based at the moment, but it goes, it looks like you might have some superpowers, and if you have these superpowers, why don't you go and check it out? And I'm showing leaders and organisations how to hold neurodiverse people up where they belong, where they can change the world, rather than just thinking, oh my gosh, what have we got to do extras to support them? So. And then I've got one for children called Navigator, which helps children to navigate their relationships, because I look back at my upbringing and I look at all the sad figures of children, being depressed and self-harming and even worse, and suicide rates. And you mentioned very clearly those key areas between the ages of 14 and 21, is it, or 14? That kind of catchment area there is so important. So this is before they've finished developing their own behaviour profile, giving them a navigation tool to say, if this is how you act, then this is how you will be perceived by some and by others. And if you change that to this, then it gives you this kind of beautiful kaleidoscope without putting them in a box and saying, this is you, we don't do that.
That's amazing. That's, those are tools that we need today because we've not been intentional about relationships in the past, but there's so many moving parts to the world of life as we know it, online, offline, in office, working from home, hybrid, globally. There's so many moving parts that we need to get better at to do relationships well. Understanding yourself and understanding how others perceive you is just a powerful starting point for getting better at relationships. So yeah, we're going to check out those tools as well.
Yep, yeah, and I should clarify when Andrew says we, she does mean the world, society. We're not so good at doing that. We're certainly on that journey as well, but I think you meant it was a bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture. We in society. John always picks up when I can be misunderstood with saying
those tools
we.
sound fascinating. Even now, I'll ask you, how can people get a hold of some of those tools if they want to find out more? How do they find out more about the magic maverick world of Michelle Mills Porter?
They've got to just reach out and create a relationship with me. And the best way to do that is either pick up the phone or drop me a message on LinkedIn. There's only one Michelle Mills Porter on the planet. Thank God, my husband says. But yeah, I mean, just reach out and create a relationship. I love relationships. I love the exploration, the beauty of organically seeing where relationships grow like a flower blooming. I love those relationships. So just reach out. I have to say, there's one thing that I want to add about relationships, because I've been with the love of my life, my gorgeous toy boy, for 30 years this year.
Congratulations!
Yes, wow.
Yeah, and what you say in your TEDx talk is so right. You've got to work at it. We used to clash a lot, but it wasn't until after I created Essence, the core driving forces analysis, that I realised that his core drivers are the opposite of mine. So he's really kind of interested in creating wealth or saving money and all the rest of it. I'm spending it. I'm getting vintage parcels every day, and we clash all the time. Now we can just laugh at each other. I will leave a restaurant. I will leave a tip, for the people that served us and all the rest of it. Stuart thinks it wasn't particularly good service. He'll walk behind me, pick it up and put it in his pocket. So we've learned to actually laugh at each other and meet in the middle and say, that's just your core driver, and just chill out on that core driver. Let me fill up my bucket for a bit. And that's what we do. We fill each other's buckets and allow time to fill each other's buckets whilst saying, okay, I'm letting you fill your bucket now.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. What a great imagery as well. And the challenge is, most people, and we were in that camp until we started researching this and understanding what was going on between us as well. Most people don't know what fills their buckets. And when you're together, especially as a couple, you presume that you're attracted to each other because you're so like each other. So what fills my bucket surely must fill your bucket too. And you end up draining each other in the relationship because you're not realizing you have different things that you need to fill different buckets. And how do you make space for that?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to say that is the same in a workplace as well, because it happens. It's just all of us. It's not just in a relationship. We perceive the world through our lens.
Yeah.
You can always, when you are in mediation, I'm going to say a big up to Jane Gunn, the barefoot mediator. She's brilliant at this stuff. But when you're in that situation and you need to mediate, you've got to understand that everyone has a slightly different opinion of the world to you, and it all boils down to that. It all boils down to the fact that you've forgotten that they're perceiving the world in a different way. That's all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really powerful. I have to also doff my cap to Gary Chapman and his book. Is it 5 Languages of Love or 6?
5 Love Languages.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I read that book now, and I think I've still got a copy in my bedside cabinet. I read it now, and actually, his work and my work, in essence, actually, there's quite a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Although they come from different areas, it is about understanding what the other person needs. That's what Gary Chapman does brilliantly. And don't get me wrong, I've used that in my marriage as well.
Mhm.
to understand that, when my husband is out defrosting my car in his bother boots and his dressing gown on a frosty morning, whilst I'm getting ready, and he comes in and says, "I've defrosted your car and it's all ready, the engine's running," and I go, "Thanks. Yeah, I could have kettle of water and what have we done." But actually, I realise that what he's showing me is how much he loves me
Yeah.
through his demonstration
Yeah.
of his practical, the
Yeah.
way he sees it. And equally, I know that what he loves more than anything is for me to surprise him with cooking food or his favourite meal or having it prepared for him. That just it just fills his buckets. For me, it's just like whatevs, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And
Yep.
the more, and the discipline is to remember to keep doing that, because it's so easy to forget the things that really fill their buckets and not do enough of it.
Or the challenge is to focus on the things that fill your own bucket and forget about them.
Yeah.
And whereas really the love language is all about forgetting about yourself and focusing on the other person. And if they can do the same, forget about themselves and focus on you, together, happy days.
Yeah.
But most of us selfishly, we focus on ourselves. Well, this is what I need. This is what I need. Why aren't you doing this for me? Kind of a thing.
Mm.
It's not what it's about. That's a very short-term approach. It's not what long-term relationships are built on. Focus on the other person, help them fill their bucket. They do the same for you. Happy days.
Let me give you a very quick example of something that happened not long ago. I saw this beautiful sunset coming, decided I have a high aesthetic core driving, which means I love awe, wonder, beauty, and I will chase a rainbow and chase the sunset. And I said to my husband, I said, "Stuart, get in the van, please, will you drive me? I want to go here, I want to go there, and I just want to take photos." And he's like, "Oh, all right then." And he knows, like, I'm filling my bucket. And he stops in the car park and he moans and he groans and he lets me get out and take loads of photos. And I got back into the van after taking all these photos of this beautiful sunset. And he was like so grumpy. And he's brilliant at sarcasm. He's a brilliant I love his sense of humour. And he's so sarcastic. And I said to him, I said, "Will you stop being so sarcastic and so grumpy?" And he turned around and he says, "No, it fills my buckets."
That's hilarious.
I can't argue with that one.
Yeah,
But it gives you a different lens through which to perceive the sarcasm,
Exactly.
right? And that's what it's about.
It's not a negative thing anymore. It's helping fill his bucket, so he's good.
I don't know if I'll ever agree with that about sarcasm, because one of the things that fills my bucket is words, and negative words will, puncture a massive hole in there. So, but anyway, it's about learning about each other. And, I knew we would be so aligned in this whole conversation about reading people's behavior, becoming more self-aware of yourself, knowing who you are and what makes you tick, but also getting better at understanding the same for the other person so that you can collaborate together. And isn't it wonderful? What you said earlier is still ringing in my ears, that even if we don't speak the same language, when we're aligned on a goal,
Yeah.
we can communicate. What a note. I think that's a great note to end on, unless you had other things that you
I
wanted
was just
to
going to
ask.
say, is there anything else that you haven't, anything else that you really wanted to get across to the audience, to just say, here's a massive tip to share with you? Or, I mean, you shared so many wonderful insights already.
I think the only thing that I would say is that actually this is not a rocket science. It is a skill that we have as human beings. So when people say, "Oh yeah, I've done a profile, I know what that is," no, you haven't. What you need to do is you need to apply it.
Yeah.
So if you've done a profile, that's great, but are you applying it on a regular basis in your life?
Yeah.
And what I show people how to take the results of those analyses and exercise them so that they become a sixth sense,
Yeah.
so that they're doing it automatically. As an expert, I see people's core driving forces shine out of them, not just their behavior. So when you exercise that skill over a long period of time, it is just natural. You apply that in the world of customer service or relationships or sales or whatever. It's a huge advantage which is at our fingertips as human beings. Just open the door.
Powerful.
Yeah. Just, picking up on the point you're making there, one of the things that we hear a lot is some of the tools. A simple tool, take the example of Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, which we use a lot as part of habit 4, and we're showing people how to connect in relationships. So many people say, yes, I've done the love languages.
I've read the book.
I've read the book, done the love language. I know what they are. Okay. Are you applying them? How are they working out for you? What? Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I'm not really applying them anymore. Yeah. As you say, making it part of who you are is really what it all comes down to.
I'm going to use that line, making it the sixth sense, because that is exactly what it's about, being able to intuitively apply it in that moment of interaction. That's where it really makes the difference. So we've learned from you as well. We'll pick that one, make it the sixth sense. Michelle, I was thinking already the title for this podcast has to be something to do with maverick and magnificent, because that's what you've inspired, and you just it's the light's just pouring out of you, the joy is just pouring out of you, the passion is just pouring out of you. You are maverick and magnificent. So thank you for making the time and having the conversation with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for allowing me this space.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure. Well, I think that at that point it's a wrap. Thank you so much to our audience around the world for tuning in yet again. More insights, some maverick, magnificent insights this time. Things that we can be doing to get the best out of ourselves, the people around us, to actually get the best out of relationships. So much to reflect on back there. How we can learn from adversity, how we can actually decide to walk the same path, to relate better to people, even when we're struggling to communicate. We speak different languages, we can still communicate and do that well.
Yeah,
so.
the brilliance of collaborating when we share a common goal. Yeah. It's in all of us. Let's do it better.
Let's do it better. Make it the sixth sense. I got my teeth back in there. But thanks for joining us, and see you all again next time. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships, so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.